We'll continue with part 6 of Federalist number 6. Hamilton is continuing with sharing the lessons of history with his readers. He's saying, if you think we do not unite and we will be okay, we will not go to war, you are mistaken, because here is the list of lessons that past has to teach us. Here are these ambitious people that when there was no reason whatsoever for countries to go to war, they did. Because you'll always find people that want to elevate themselves, put themselves on a pedestal for personal reasons. These are ambitious people, or there's a small group to satisfy their interests. They have a passion, but this passion is for their faction. And faction, we already spoke about it. It's a minority or a majority, but it's a minority or majority that puts the interest of their party above community. So we'll continue. And in this paragraph, he says, to multiply examples of the agency of personal consideration in the production of great national events, either foreign or domestic, according to their direction, would be an unnecessary waste of time. Those who have but a superficial acquaintance with the sources from which they are to be drawn will themselves recollect a variety of instances. And those who have a tolerable knowledge of human nature will not stand in need of such lights to form their opinion either of the reality or the extent of that agency. Perhaps, however, a reference tending to illustrate the general principle may with propriety be made to a case which has happened among ourselves. If Shays had not been a desperate debtor, it is much to be doubted whether Massachusetts would have been plunged into a civil war. Okay. Again, he says, if you know a little bit about human nature, and if all these examples that we've shared and we're going to share, if you have a little patience, a little wisdom, and look at all of these, you will notice that thinking that peace is going to happen on its own when nations are in they have commercial treaties, they're not going to go to war, says you're half asleep and half confused. This is not the case. If you know about human nature, remember what he said about human nature at the very, very beginning. Argument against their existence would be to forget that men are ambitious, vindictive, rapacious, all the nasty things that human beings do when they are nasty and at nasty times. They're just thinking about themselves, they're hateful, revengeful. So Hamilton does not have a good view of human nature in general. He was a young man living in one of those small islands in the Caribbean. He's lucky enough to show that he's got talent, and some people fund his education, send him to New York. They see that he's got potential, and he grows up, gets educated, participates in the American Revolution, and sees a lot of things as he's participating in these things and growing up. And again, because of his past, his childhood experience, I think, is just not very, how would you say? He's not, he's very, very realistic about human nature and how bad people can get. So he says, look, you follow history, you see what we've done. And then at the end of it, he mentions, let's look at what happened in Massachusetts just a few months ago. Because in around December or around winter of 1786, leading into January, February of 1787, this is only 6-7 months before they got together in the convention in Philadelphia. There was a rebellion that was led by this former revolutionary officer named Daniel Shays. And there were a lot of the farmers in the western part of Massachusetts were desperate because they had debts, they'd been fighting in the war, they'd left their families behind, farms behind, and because of the Revolutionary War, the states had gone into debt, production was low, so a lot of people who were creditors, who'd lent money, wanted some of their money back. Now here you have a lot of farmers that are just back from fighting in the Revolutionary War, and they just don't have the gold and silver to pay back their debts. So these creditors are coming to take their lands and farms away. There's a rebellion. It is finally put down, but that is one of the main catalysts, one of the main things that forced people, or at least the leaders of these 13 states, we know 12 of them eventually went to Philadelphia Convention to write this Constitution because they knew there was going to be rebellion after rebellion because the financial situation of the country was in a bad shape. And in the book I showed you, Unruly Americans, it talks a lot about this. And in other books that talk about lead up to the Philadelphia Convention. Let me show those books to you again.